right. Hello, this is Abel Pacheco. I am excited to have you today because we have an amazing guest, Brian Eastman. Man, he is going to teach us how to unlock our retirement plans. Brian, would love to introduce you, but first, let me just say hello and thanks for coming, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Abel. This will be a lot of fun today, I'm sure.
Yeah, we sincerely appreciate your time, and I think we're going to have a good conversation because, if you're listening to the show, you may have heard about some of the alternative investments, some of the ways to invest outside of typical retirement plan. And if you've never heard about how to take control of your retirement and unlock your 401k and redirect it, Brian's going to explain a lot more about it. He's been in this for about 14 years and allows for entities and people and individuals just like you that are trying to figure out how to direct your investments and leverage the ability to invest where you want to in the asset classes that you want to in the particular type of investments without being locked and caged in the way some of our retirement plans do. He's going to show us all of that stuff. So he is one of those experts and pros that's been doing this for a number of years, 14 years plus, and he's with IRA 123. So anyways, let me turn it over to him for a second. Brian, in your own words, if you can, please just introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, and let's start a great conversation, man. Tell us a little bit about it.
Certainly. Again, my name is Brian Eastman. I'm one of the principals with Safeguard Advisors. We're a boutique retirement firm. We put together what are called self-directed retirement plans with a focus on checkbook control. So the whole idea is we're going to basically make you your own private fund manager with respect to your retirement plan. And we have a couple different plan formats. It's a combination of legal and consulting services we put together. But the idea is to enable you to take that tax sheltered money and invest much more diversely. Instead of just being limited to stocks and funds, you can invest in real estate, whether it's direct ownership of a rental or a multifamily or some kind of other industrial commercial property, mortgage notes. We have people investing in venture capital and cryptocurrency and just a whole lot of things that have been allowed by the IRS rules since the early days back in the 1970s when IRAs were first created, but that just aren't served through the Wall Street firms. So it's a super niche little thing and something we've been having a lot of fun with for a lot of years now.
Yeah. That's awesome. So before we dig, really into the checkbook control and some of the investments and really how to build wealth like the 1%. I'd love to learn, just a second or two about you as well. Did you grow up in the investing world? Were you always kind of this, position to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to take control of finances? Did you stumble upon it? Tell us about how you got to where you're at today. That'd be great.
It's a completely roundabout, indirect route. I mean, I grew up in suburban Los Angeles. My dad was a district attorney. My mom was a school teacher. So no, they were government employees. They had their government pensions. That was that. We didn't talk a lot of we didn't talk a lot of finance. It just wasn't part of the equation. I was thinking I was going to go into law until I sat down in the room with all the people taking the LSAT in San Francisco in the late 80s and said, man, these are a bunch of people I don't want to be at school with for the next 3 years, much less practice a career. Sorry to any of our attorney friends, but that was the vibe I got in that room, let me tell you. So I've just been an entrepreneur and out doing a lot of different things since. I've been all over the map in automotive wholesaling, parts and software design and whatnot. And what sort of triggered this direction is in the early 2000s. I was working with a small software company, really enjoyed it. I was like employee number 7, and they got acquired twice in the same year and went from 50 people to 400 people. And I went from top of the food chain to just sort of off in the sidelines, middle of the stack. And I could just see the writing on the wall that it wasn't going to be that much fun. So I actually went out and just sort of became a gentleman contractor for a while. I went out and flipped houses for 3-4 years, really got into real estate and learning that myself. Did a couple of really good deals, did some flips, did some little small, flip a house and subdivide the lot and sell it off to a builder, a few things like that, did a little bit of private lending and just really learned that industry, which was all great until 2008, when I could buy all the houses I wanted, but nobody could get a loan to buy them from me. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when I stumbled into this business. I'd heard a little bit about self-directed IRAs. I'd actually set up an account with a custodian and was thinking I might do some private lending with the money I had. I actually lucked out. I was in the process of doing all that and sitting in cash in the summer of 2007 when things tanked.
Mm-hmm.
So that was not planned, but entirely fortunate. And learned about it, and then found it limiting, trying to work with a third-party processor and everything, and stumbled into a gentleman who originally founded Safeguard, a gentleman named Robert, and really liked what he was doing. We hooked up. He was this was real early in this business. It was still sort of proof of concept. And I just had the operations and the sort of client training mindset that would take his sort of visionary idea of this sort of web-based information focused business and take it to the next level.
Yeah. What year was that? What year?
That was in 08.
Okay.
That was in 08. Yeah.
I was buying my first house at the time. So you have already gone through that part. You were in a cash position. You saw some of the obstacles and challenges, right, that other people went through. And you're like, oh man, this is a great opportunity. Also around that time, it's like, man, the web is internet coming online, iPhones coming out, social media, et cetera, is just launching. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
And so you were working with the company first, and then, man, how did you become one of the owners as entrepreneurs? Because there's a lot of us that are listening and watching right now. Man, how did you make that shift?
It was just, it was just a couple of us, and I obviously really drove, taking it from just sort of an idea and a little bit of from some framework into a real business. And then Robert, who'd started it, he was older, and he was done with a regular day to day. He actually sort of retired and moved. We were in Portland, Oregon at the time, and he moved to Texas. And he needed to take care of his mom, and he actually just sort of became a real estate developer. And it was an opportunity to take over the business, and my partner and I did that. And we actually was 2017 migrated from Portland to Denver, wanted to be more in the middle of the country. We work with clients all across the country and always sort of felt 3 hours behind. So wanted to had to stay close to the mountains still, needed that. So that was as far east as we could go, but we're liking it. We like Denver.
Well, good. Well, before we talk about, investment strategies and, how to build wealth, one of the things that I already heard, right, is, and you took a leap yourself. You took the risk to go build something. You said, hey, man, this is a great idea. Let's build a framework around it. So for those people that are they're not even this far along, we're trying to talk about the wealth creation strategies. I mean, one of the first ones is risk. Like, you have to be comfortable with risk. So maybe give us a couple of maybe thoughts on that. Like, hey, what were some of the risks that you had to take, or anybody has to take, rather, to make an investment? And and any insight you have to give somebody to say, yeah, it's time to take a leap. Time to take a leap.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, a lot of it was being given a swift kick in the backside by corporate America. I was smart enough and saw the writing on the wall that I just didn't have the kind of future I was looking for where I was at. I wasn't like a hardcore technology director level person. I was pretty high up, but I was more on the operations side and planning and whatnot. And I could just see, I was in my early 40s, and I could see, I'm going to be obsolete. And I'm going to be expensive, and they're going to go hire some young kid who doesn't have 1/10 of the knowledge that I've accumulated. But so what? They're 30% cheaper. So I saw that writing on the wall. So that incentivized me to go do something different.
You got the incentive. Yeah.
And I guess, I could have gone and looked for something else in software development, but I'd been hearing about real estate. I knew a few people who were involved in it. It was a pretty hot time in real estate in 04, 05. I'll be honest, on my first flip, should have taken me 3 weeks, took me 15, and I made an extra 10 grand by taking that long because properties were appreciating so fast. It was awesome. Crazy. That didn't happen all the time, but that was a nice first starter. So it was just sort of facts pushed me that way. I've always been able to consume lots of information and synthesize it to its essentials. And so looking and creating a business plan and shifting focus and whatnot was challenging, but it was something I was pretty comfortable doing. And And then same thing moving into this business, that it aligned well with my skill set and I enjoyed it. So that was a pretty shift.
Well, good deal. Well, if to extract the nugget that I heard, a couple of them, and if you're listening, right, it's, man, I heard real estate a couple of times with Brian. What he also mentioned was being able to synthesize that data down to the actual point. And, whether he said it or not, it required action on Brian's part. Like, he had to act, he took advantage of. And, around that time, 07, 08, turmoil. So there's another time, 2021, 22 is like, oh, hey, we're right here. It's like, oh man, that's a turmoil time. You got to be able to, synthesize the data, figure out the best framework, take action, implement. And anyways, thank you very much, Ryan, just for letting us in your personal world as well.
Sure.
So our show, right, we're really focusing on how to build wealth like the 1%. There's certain strategies, there's mindsets, there's paradigms. There are things that the wealthy know they've learned, they're implementing, or they hire somebody else to implement for them. In either case, they're making moves that a lot of others that aren't in that position, that, they're making those moves, right? So talk to us a little bit about your client base, just so we have a big holistic view. Who actually comes to your company to get served? Who are they? What type of individuals, what type of professions do they have? Whether it's generalities or certain themes, any and all insight to this, so we can learn from what you see.
Yeah, you got 5 hours, right? But yeah. No, I mean, it's kind of all over the map, and it's kind of not. We'll get, for the most part, in order to take advantage of a self-directed IRA, you got to be a little bit older. You have to have had some time in a career, some time accumulating some retirement funds that you can then pick up and move. You can't move your current employer's 401k while you're still employed. So it's usually somebody who's on their second or third job, at least. Maybe they've accumulated 50, 100. Of course, we have clients with, $1 million, $3 million. That's rare in a retirement plan. But most folks have, between 100 and a half million in accumulated retirement savings. They may not be wanting to put all of that towards non-traditional assets, but that's sort of where they're at. So typically it's somebody, maybe mid 40s and up. We see some exceptions to that. It's somebody who's kind of figured out already that the standard retirement game isn't really rigged in your favor. It's a nice tax structure. It really benefits people in the middle and upper classes, the tax advantages that come with retirement plans. But the investment options have really served Wall Street more than they've served the investing community. So people have sort of figured that out and says, hey, there's got to be a way I can optimize this. Well, first on the list is our real estate people. They know real estate. They know the wealth building power it has. Second on the list is our engineers. They sort of figured that out and say, hey, how do I optimize something, right? I'm seeing these lackluster returns. I know I can do better. We, of course, see a lot of medical professionals. These are people who've accumulated some wealth and whatnot. But it's all across the age scale, the income scale, the sort of the aptitude scale. We have people who are completely hands-on and active in something like real estate and know it really well. And they say, hey, here's something I know I can go do much better with my retirement plan, putting it to work in this niche that I'm familiar with. That's great. We get people who are just like, you know what, I've been a corporate person. I'm in banking or software development or whatever. I know I can do better. I don't know real estate. I don't want to be a landlord. I want to go to somebody like, Abel and say, I want to be a passive investor. And, you guys go do the real estate, and I just want to throw some retirement dollars at that. And we'll see a mix of all those things.
Yeah. Okay. God, that makes perfect sense. I love it. Thank you very much for sharing the insight, because, for our listeners, if you're any one of those categories, it's like, hey, and you're not taking advantage of some of these investment strategies and vehicle and the ability to diversify outside of the 401k, you should be like hitting pause, rewinding, and saying, okay, what the heck are they talking about? Because this is what a lot of us are doing today to try to build wealth and create a higher return for ourselves with better tax strategies, avoiding capital gains taxes in a retirement plan, qualified retirement plan, but not having to pay, the taxes and have the flexibility to go where I want to. So that's one. another thing I heard in here is I'm hoping you have some data points for us, because when you said the 401k, the traditional and its, in its plan, it's a lot of people, if you don't take advantage of education that's out there and inform yourself of how to make some trades. I was one of these individuals. I didn't know it. I didn't want to learn about trading or stock trading or anything. This is when I was in my 20s. I was in IT as well, Brian. So I worked at a large IT hosting company. I was a tech guy. I was a sales guy, and we made a lot of money in tech. And I was like, oh yeah, 401k. I'm supposed to do it. Company has a little bit of matching program. It wasn't dollar for dollar, but it was like something. Just put my money in there. I chose a plan. I set it and forget it. I didn't make any moves. And then I look back multiple years later. I went through 2008, took a downturn, a little bit more, and I was like, what the heck happened? When I look back at my returns, I was like, this was not the aggressive return mix that I was looking for. The returns were pretty weak. So when I found real estate, I go, okay, this is how to maneuver. But I get excited as I talk about this, because I think you're going to help educate or illuminate some of the advantages of this. The data points around that, like, what are some of the myths that people think about 401k? I'm supposed to be making X return, and I'm paying these multiple fees. This is hitting me. What do people expect, and then what are people actually getting in their company corporate work plans?
Sure. Well, that's a little different because we don't deal with those plans. So I don't have,
which is why they come to
data
you, though,
points,
right?
but I can talk a little bit.
Which is why they come to you, though, right, Brian?
Exactly. And then they look at their wanting to do something different. The one thing I'll say is what you did in many ways is exactly the right thing, because the key thing about retirement plans is the tax benefits of that money, the compounding over multiple years, the tax savings, reinvesting that savings instead of paying it in taxes, mushrooming that money. And whether you do that in the stock market or in some other asset class, it's a founding principle. And when you throw money in your 401k, you're reducing it from your taxes in that year. If you get a match, that's like a free 100% return on investment right there. And if the overall returns in a corporate retirement plan are so, and I mean, you go read Wall Street numbers, they'll say they over the longer term average in the 6, 7, 8% range, right? You'll have a plus 20 year, you'll have a minus 3 year, right? So it doesn't trend at that 8% because you get your dips and then you got to rebuild. But nonetheless, over a long period of time, I mean, there's plenty of 401k millionaires who are people who made $70,000 a year and just diligently put money in and saved and got it. So I'm not going to say you shouldn't do that, because then the next thing is, how many people stay in their job for 30 years like my dad did? Almost nobody, right? So you go work for your first, 8, 10 years in a couple of tech jobs, and you get a 401k, and you switch from working at, I don't know, GoDaddy over to Rackspace or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And you got that 401k. Well, great. You accumulated some savings. That's a win. The thing is, what do you do at that next juncture? And that's the key difference. Rather than say, hey, I worked at company A and I accumulated $75,000 in my retirement plan. I'm going to switch and go get a little upgrade in my job over at company B. That's now available to you, that retirement plan. And you could roll it to company B. You could roll it out into an IRA, someplace like E-Trade Fidelity, and do your own stock trading. Or you could choose to take some or part of that and put it in a self-directed retirement plan. And that's that juncture. But you got to have some gas in the tank first. So that saving in your early career is huge, because the more you do, the earlier you do it, the better you are.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great point. So anybody that's in their younger years, you just started working, you're in your teens, 20s, whatever. A lot of the investments that we work with, Five Talents Capital, we're in San Antonio, Texas. We're buying 100, 150 unit properties on a minimum. These are 10, 20, now we've got, $40+ million deals that we're looking at. These usually have a minimum investment of about $50,000 to $100,000 as a syndication, right? So investors that come with us, they put in that money. Well, if you're in your younger years and you don't have 50 or 100K, that means you've got to invest your money. You've got to take a portion off the table out of your active capital from your W-2 job. You've got to take it and invest it somewhere. And you got to put it to work, right? So a lot of times if a company has a match, like Brian's saying, hey, you're taking advantage of it. Okay, we did the right thing, right? Once you leave that company and you're going, I went from Rackspace, it's funny that you mentioned, to another company. And when I left, I was like, oh, great, I can redirect this 401k that I had been saving. That's what we put in, something like this self-directed IRA. And it wasn't with Wells Fargo because they're not going to let you put it in Rackspace. I mean, put it in real estate. You need to go to somebody like with Brian Eastman, and his company there at Safeguard, because they allow you to invest in multiple vehicles. So it was that first part. And then I think I heard Brian say, roughly stock market 6 to 7%, maybe higher. I think the S&P freaking index, S&P 500 is usually considered a benchmark, right? And I think the average return that I've seen, the number fluctuates like 10% over the years. You have ups and downs. So the difference at it is, man, a 10%, and you're trying to figure out where I can put a dollar in to get a 16% return, a 12% return, a 14%. And not every investment's going to, crush it. You'll have some low ones and high ones, but man, if you can average out better than the stock market average, you're doing better than most others that aren't willing to take that extra risk. Did I summarize that okay, Brian? What do you think?
You did, and I would actually that last piece you said, real critical thing to think about there. Most commercial real estate investments don't hit home runs. They don't get that 30% return like if you were an initial investor in some cool startup, which you can see in the stock market. But they also don't tend to crater out when the news cycle happens bad, or when some dictator in Russia decides to start a war and constrict the economy of the entire world, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So what I often will say to people is, you don't hit a lot of home runs. You hit a lot of singles and a lot of doubles. But if you hit singles and doubles most of the time you're coming up to bat, you put a lot of runs across the plate.
Yeah.
As opposed to striking out every once in a while on a bad bet.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. Well, thank you so much. I think this is good. It's good jumping point, right? So you have a lot of clients across the board, a lot of amazing, strategists, investors. And I know the part of the checkbook control is you turn that over to your investors. You're not there analyzing deals. You're not an investment advisory. You just unlock the ability for investors to choose their own route. So I'll caveat that part. That's, we don't come to Brian for investment advice. We come to him for the ability to say, hey, I've got my 401k. I want to convert it. I left the job. I want to go do something else where I put it. However, I'm sure you see a lot of themes across maybe the biggest accounts, your biggest clients. Maybe any insight you can filter to us to say, hey, you know what? Some of our biggest clients, they're doing A, B, C, X, Y, Z. I see them over and over and over again. So we're trying to talk about how the wealthy build their 1%. So man, sure. Any insight you can give, that'd be amazing.
Sure. Well, I want to shortcut that real quick with something you just said, which is great. Yeah. As far as what we do, we're building a tool to give our investors full control over their funds. And then more importantly, we're their user's manual. We tell you what you can and can't do with respect to IRS rules and the types of investments are allowed. And I'm sure we'll come back to that a little later in the point, but the way you framed that, I thought was great. So that's what we do. So yeah, you're your own fund manager. You're picking your own investments. We're here to help you make sure, your investments aren't going to break any IRS rules. What I would say to answer your question is it's not so much that one thing that people are investing in, although there's a couple of things I'll bring up. It's people are investing in what they know best. And that's different for different people. I've got guys who are in banking and finance, and they're connected with people who do venture capital, and they're investing in startups. I've got people who do what you do. They put together real estate deals, and they're hugely networked into a whole real estate community, and they know other developers. They want to invest in their syndications. They know people who are, putting together deals and need mezzanine financing and whatnot. I got people who are real estate agents, and they just know single family residential rental income properties and landlording and stuff like that. So that's what they're doing. So that really is the key, is investing in something that you know and are comfortable with. Now, for a lot of people, maybe some biomedical engineering thing, right? And you're not an engineer, although you might see some of what's going on in some new, biotech and invest in some startups. But you've got that analytical ability to go to something like a commercial real estate, either a syndication or a fund, and compare a couple and say, hey, this looks like the one where I can go passively invest some money with somebody else. And I'd say that's where the real players are. They're not, unless they're super well connected in a specific space, that just happens to be their niche. They're giving their money to a professional who has some, accredited fund vehicle or a syndication, and they're getting their money spread around. Again, you said it's $50,000, $100,000 a pop to go into a syndication. Well, would I rather put $300,000 in one single family rental or put that into 6 different commercial real estate deals? Would I rather own 100% of one door, or would I rather own 1% of 300 doors? They're different profiles, and they do good. And right now, frankly, the multifamily, the industrial warehousing, the distribution center space, the medical lab space, those are huge markets that a lot of people are throwing money towards.
Man, I love all that mindset. I'm trying to take notes as quickly as I can, because you mentioned a few things. The main one that the first and main one that I love to hear is that people are investing in what they know. They're specialized in a certain area, or they've got a lot of education in a certain area, or they're connected, or maybe even I think another part was like where you're saying, hey, they are connected to people that have a high level of expertise. They're leveraging other people's education and knowledge and content, what they know, and they trust them well to go do that. And I mean, that's the way that we've been able to create a massive amount of wealth very quickly in relation to I think some of the investors around me, because what we do is we try to highly specialize or focus on our education on one lane and just knock it out. And there are things that there's experts around us, contractors, rehab, renovation, all this real estate stuff that they've got 30 years of experience. And I don't. I've done single family for 10, 12 years, and I've done commercial real estate for a few years. But frankly, I'm relying on somebody else who has like 30 years of experience in syndication law, 30 years of experience in commercial real estate, in property management, asset management, all this stuff. And that's just, I leverage the education and the expertise and people around me, and that's how I've been able to go on fire. And I like for the fund model, which is really slick. Right. I may not know anything about biomedical engineering, but if I know that that's the next space, or cannabis, or whatever the space is, and there's someone else who's got their 10,000 hours in that area, and they're starting a 506c fund. I think Brian Eastman said, hey, they're accredited, that you can put some money, and now they're spreading that investment across multiple lanes. And I have 50 or 100K, and it's, I'm making an average off of all of them. Man, that more power to you. And those are some of the things, like you said, you give investors a vehicle in which to do that, where they maybe not have had before, right?
Exactly.
Okay, that's awesome, man. So I got a couple of those things, and then I think in this model, I think it's this idea. We're doing a diversification, South Texas diversification fund right now, for accredited investors. And essentially it's, I know we're going to do well on a deal. We're leveraging all the experts, but ultimately I have some investors that want to diversify in commercial real estate, but not be all over the board or have to manage like 10 different investments. They'll put 100, 200 grand in our fund, and then they're invested in every single one of our deals. So they like this diversification kind of fund model, especially where we're going. So that makes sense. Do you have a good amount of crypto investors, blockchain investors as well?
We do. They're probably a little nervous this week, but no, we've seen a lot of that. I mean, going all the way back to, I think the first time we ran into it was back in about 2014, and we had to say, what is this, and learn about it and get our tax attorneys engaged and figure it out. It didn't really hit the ground until 17. And fortunately, we were kind of ready. We knew the lay of the land. I'm a crypto investor myself, mostly because I had to know how it works. Right. I've always sort of looked at it as, well, it's a little bit of a casino. I see the technology potential. I see the promise. I also see the the issues. And so I wouldn't put any money in it that I couldn't afford to lose. But I've been through it. I've set up accounts. I've worked with the mechanics. I've dealt with storage, and I talked to a ton of investors who, again, some people have connections. I've got a couple of guys who've done some really interesting things in some distributed finance, autonomous organizations, buying up land that's got, mineral rights on it, and then building a server farm on top of it to create a stable coin that's based on the mineral rights, the actual asset value of the land. And, these are accredited fund, $300 million venture type stuff, and you put your $100,000 towards it or whatever. But there's some interesting stuff you learn about in that space for sure.
Yeah. We were, coming from tech, like our friends are like, oh, you're investing in blockchain and Bitcoin and all. So since 2016, 2017, we put a little bit in there, but it's always been it's been like a small portion. It's never been a big foundational like commercial real estate, but have my sliver, my small percentage of all of our holdings. On that note, you have gold investors too, right? People that invest in. I can use yours to buy physical gold or only shares. How does the gold part work with you guys?
Yeah, so that changed. Yeah, that changed up a little bit and whatnot. There was a court ruling that was really poorly done. It came out last November, and the idea of having your own physical possession of metals was something that wasn't real clear in the law. Yeah. And a couple set up a checkbook IRA elsewhere, went out and did it really sloppy. They mixed personal metals and IRA metals, and they didn't keep good records. And there were plenty of ways that the tax court could have penalized them in a rational way, and they chose an irrational way. And they didn't like that idea of what they call unfettered control of the asset. Yeah. And so as such, we're pretty strongly recommending if you want to hold metals, that's not really something to do in a checkbook program because there's no structure where the custodian, the IRA custodian, has the metals. There are some IRA custodians that'll physically hold the metals for you in depository storage, and you can do that. We have two plans. We have an IRA-based solution where there's a third-party custodian involved. You'll have to use the custodian for metals there. Our other plan...
Same as like real estate. As long as I'm not living in the real estate or my family's not in the real estate, I can invest in real estate. So as long as I'm not holding the coin in my house, for example, but you set up a way to do it if you really want.
There's a way to do that.
Custodian,
whatnot. But with our 401ks, there is no custodian, and there's still the possibility to hold physical metals there. Although we do recommend that you use registered depository storage of some kind. But you can directly manage it without an intermediary. So
cool.
Well, it's awesome. A good hedge. It's a good hedge. We have some people put a little towards that. It's a good way to go.
Well, that's very good. Well, I appreciate it. I mean, the insight's been awesome as well so far. I know we're getting towards the end of our time. Is there any points that we really haven't talked about, either what you do, services, things that we should have talked about? Let me know.
Yeah, I mean, what we've talked about is great. Let me just, for the benefit of your audience, just give the super high level, sort of elevator pitch of what we do so people would know what to look for. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's staying a tax sheltered IRA or 401k based retirement plan. We're not changing that. The tax features, the timelines, the beneficiaries, the reporting, all that's the same, different plan architecture. So it can be invested differently. And we focus on what's called checkbook control. So in our IRA-based solution, which pretty much anybody can take advantage of, we start with a specialty institution that acts as the IRA custodian, this company called Solera Bank, call them E-Trade with different paperwork, right? Okay. We use that IRA to invest in a specially formed limited liability company, an LLC, or maybe a trust, depending on the situation, but we'll just say LLC because that's common, that's owned by the IRA, but where our client, the IRA account holder, can be the manager and have signing authority and conduct the affairs. So I like to describe that as it's kind of like having your IRA invest in a single fund, but you get to be the fund manager. And the fund, quote unquote, can invest in anything that the IRS rules allow for. You're not limited to what's sold on a particular platform, right? So that's what we call a checkbook IRA. For people who are self-employed and don't have any full-time employees in any business that they own or control, there's another option. It's called a solo 401k, and it's an IRA on steroids. Much higher contribution limits. You can have tax-deferred and Roth money. You can have both, like a husband and wife, if they both work in a business or have their own separate businesses, in one plan instead of two. So there are just some really nice plan side advantages in the structure. And in that case, there's not even a custodian. The 401k is a form of trust, and you're the trustee. You run the plan. And you just, instead of going and asking a third-party administrator to run your plan and limit what you can invest in, like a big company would absolutely do if you're managing other people's money, you just go open a bank account or a brokerage account in the name of your 401k trust. Super cool. So those are what we do. And we basically put that together. It's a 2 to 4 week process to get it set up and get the money moved. And then we're the user's manual. So we understand IRS rules. That's a conversation for another day. But the key thing is keeping things at arm's length and exclusively for the benefit of the plan. So it's not, hey, I want to go invest in X. Here's some money I can get some hands on. It's my IRA, instead of being limited to investing in the stock market, is going to pick real estate syndications or private loans or cryptocurrencies or whatever. So again, you can be the fund manager and put the money to work, but you can't benefit today paying yourself a management fee or buying a vacation house that you want to live in or anything like that. So we help people navigate that.
Yeah.
So that's the service.
I love it. Thank you. I like the when you said you're a manual for it's you as a listener, right? If you're trying to figure out how to build wealth, you need to educate yourself on the asset class or the investment or the what vehicle you feel the most excited about learning, want to jump in, you're most passionate about. That's what you should spend your time learning, as opposed to, when can I invest my this around the IRS? Let's let a company like Safeguard, they'll help you do that once you've picked the vehicle. And that's the way to leverage other people's knowledge, because somebody like Brian spent years and years and years keeping up with the IRS code, IRS schedule, how to make sure it's, the right way to invest within IRS guidelines and keep within your retirement plan. And you can let an expert like them do that for you. You pick the asset class, you be the fund manager, and then hire somebody that's got 14 years of experience and they're on your team. And
that's exactly it. I mean, I would say 98% of the people who contact us, they already know kind of what they want to be investing in.
Yeah.
They're not coming to us and say, I'm sick and tired of my company 401k plan. What should I be investing in? Because we can't answer that question. We could say, these are the types of things you could, but you got to go figure out, are you interested in rental properties or private funds or whatever?
Yeah. All right. Well, that sounds great, man. Thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate it. For those that want to reach out to you, or actually, who do you want to contact you? Who's the right person that should be contacting you? And where do they go? Where do they click? Who do they call? Where am I headed?
Sure. So, I mean, bottom line is you just want to be interested in taking more agency over managing your retirement funds, have an idea of some of the things you might be interested in investing in at a high level, whatnot. We're happy to talk to anybody. If it's a 3-minute call, hey, we can't help you, great. We'll be polite. It is what it is. The people who are, using our plans and able to really leverage these tools, like I said, typically you're going to have a minimum of about $50,000 or more of available retirement funds. And by available, an IRA, you can always transfer some or part of. An old 401k, you can always transfer some or part of, or similar, TSPs and 457s and other employer plans. A current employer plan is typically going to be locked up. Probably not something that can be moved. Unfortunately, get a lot of those calls. Hey, I work for ABC company. I hate our 401k. I want to set up a self-directed. I'm like, well, you got to quit your job. And they're like, well, I like my job. I just don't like the 401k. So you're stuck there for then. But that's really the who. In terms of how, it'll be in the show notes too. And I got to double check, but it's our website is ira123.com. And if you go to ira123.com, 5TCRE, so ira123 / 5TCRE, that's a special landing page for Abel and his group over at 5 Talents. Just a little bit of information, usually we like to schedule a first call. They typically run 20, 30 minutes to really sort of sort out what somebody's doing and get them some good info and talk about which plan's going to fit them and walk them through the details. So just schedule that. There's a white paper on investing in real estate syndications you can download off there. That's real helpful. So that's the best way to get in touch. And then, big picture varies a little bit, but plans cost, $1,000 to $1,400 to set up initially, and $150 a year on average, $200 a year to maintain. It's pretty inexpensive. Details will vary based on the plan format and location, things like that. But there's a $100 discount off the initial relationship fee on folks coming in through the 5 Talents link.
Drop in the bucket compared to how many fees are in our regular trading accounts and the locked version of our work accounts. Yeah. It's crazy.
Oh, most company 401ks, I mean, they're good at hiding it, but you're paying between 3/4 and 2% of your total account value per year in fees.
Holy moly! What's the percentage? Say that again.
Between 3/4 and 2% of your total plan value is pretty common in a company 401k.
A year.
Yeah,
so it's
so
like
if you got $300,000,
compounding interest is basically
exactly.
It's crazy. I think if you did the math on that, I mean, that's like you might as well have paid for a house or something. I don't know.
Just about.
I mean, especially if you do that for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Wall Street makes money. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. There we go. Well, time to move from Wall Street. Let's go. If you're listening, it's the way to do it. You got to figure out how to make some moves, take a little bit of risk, educate yourself on the vehicles that you want to get into, and then, reach out to a pro like Brian. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot for joining the show. This is Abel Pacheco, your host for the 5 Talents podcast, How to Build Wealth Like the 1%. We look forward to helping you learn a little bit more on our next show. Brian, thank you.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.